Davy! Awesome. Welcome to Davy's Awesome Stories, where I tell funny stories from my past or go on a rant in an effort to make you laugh. So this week, I thought I would give you a little bit of insight into how my mind works. One of the ways I've come up with all this crazy crap is because I hear things, and I have an extremely literal mind. I will hear something, and my mind instantly goes to taking it literally, and usually ridiculous. For example, to this day, if somebody talks about the French dish of duck confit, I hear duck confit, and I still think of a duck sitting on a pillow. That's how my brain works. But nowadays, I hear things, my brain goes to the literal, I chuckle a little bit, I let it go. When I was a kid, I took those things so literal that I caused myself some embarrassment more than once. For example, when my parents were telling me about my birth. I'm not going to go into the whole story, it's a long story, and not very funny. Well, most of it. But one thing that was kind of funny is how I got my name. I am not the oldest brother, but I am a junior. I am named after my dad. Why? Because my grandfather wanted him to do the old Mexican tradition, naming your first son after you and your next son after your own father. I'm glad my dad did not do this, because I really don't feel like I can pull off the name Salvador. But my dad and my mom ignored him. My older brother's name is Josh. But me, they had a name picked out for me. But then, complications arose. My mother ended up in not even a 24-hour, but a little bit of a coma. I almost died. Spoilers on that one. I lived. But they had told my parents he's not going to make it. He's in an incubator. He's not breathing on his own. And my dad brought in a priest. Because at the time, my dad was Catholic. He's not anymore. I'm not Catholic either. I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Catholic. And apparently, in the Catholic faith, they don't believe that babies just necessarily go to heaven. They believe if they are unbaptized, that they go into limbo for eternity. So they brought a priest in to baptize me. My dad could not remember the name they had picked out for me. With everything going on, that was just like one of the least of his concerns. So my grandfather blurted out that I'm David Martinez Jr. I go by Davy. My dad went with it. And if they hadn't have done that, you wouldn't be watching Davy is Awesome, you'd be watching Sammy is Awesome. My mom really wanted a Sam. So 30 years later, my second son, I gave her one. But my parents were telling me this story for the first time, and with my literal mind, they got through the whole story, and the only question I could ask them was, so you named me that because you didn't want me to be in limbo for eternity? Yeah, that's what I believed at the time, that you would be stuck in limbo. At least I'd be good at it. What? Well, if I was stuck being a baby, it wouldn't be too hard for me to get under that stick every time. Yes, I thought what he meant was that for eternity, I was going to have to play that game where I go under a stick. Now, of course, they all laughed. They explained to me what limbo was. And I was a little embarrassed. But that's how I was growing up. My mind immediately went to the literal. Another example, my mother once, her and I were talking. I was about 4. And I was stammering over what I was trying to say. I couldn't get the words out. I'm sitting there like, and then, and then then, honey, just spit it out. Now I'll pause for when my wife sees this and reacts. Stop spitting on my floor! Because yes, every time I tell that story to somebody, I demonstrate. But my mother just laughed and told me that's not what she meant. I, for some reason, thought what she was telling me was that if I just spit, I'll stop stammering. It worked because right after that I was like, oh, okay. So what I was saying was, while we were playing, we looked across the field and we saw a rabbit. My mother didn't always think this was cute, though. Especially when it got her in a teeny bit of trouble. For example, around this time, she was a waitress. I don't want to tell you where, but at the time, seeing its name made me think that they, served on one leg. But she was always coming home, and I was always overhearing her talking to my dad about this one waitress that nobody likes. Specifically saying, every time we work together, I have to walk on eggshells. Don't you mean hop? What? Nothing, never mind. But then the day came that my dad was in charge of dinner. He didn't have anything planned, so he decided, let's go to Mom's work. We got to pick her up anyway. We'll stop there and get some dinner. For dinner that night, I had a chocolate pancake. But I eventually got to meet Mom's co-worker, who came up and introduced herself. Her name was Debbie. And as soon as I heard her name, I went, oh, you're the one that's always eating eggs. What? Yeah, you need to calm down. Eat something else. They have pancakes here. Well, I eat eggs sometimes, but I don't eat eggs literally all the time. No, my mom said you're always eating eggs, and then dropping the shells all over the place. Apparently, she figured out what I was talking about. And apparently, for the rest of the time my mom worked there, which wasn't very long, it was very uncomfortable between her and Debbie. There are lots more ways that I embarrassed myself younger because of my literal mind. But I will say this, luckily, I eventually grew out of that. I learned that just because it comes into my head doesn't mean that's necessarily what it means. And I'm glad I learned that. Because I remember in high school health class, when they were talking about mental health, they mentioned a condition called bipolar, and my first thought was a big white bear that swings both ways. So there you have it, that's my story video this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications when I post videos. Leave a comment I can respond to in my next comment corner. If you had a literal mind like I do, give me some ways that your mind was too literal. Love you guys.